Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Teresa Warner, and I am the 105th president of the National Press Club. We are the world's leading professional organization for journalists, committed to our profession's future through our programming with events such as this, while fostering a free press worldwide. For more information about the National Press Club, please visit our website at www.press.org. To donate to programs offered to the public through our National Press Club Journalism Institute, please visit press.org/institute. On behalf of our members worldwide, I'd like to welcome our speaker and those of you attending today's event. Our head table includes guests of our speaker, as well as working journalists who are National Press Club members. And if you hear applause in our audience, we'd note that members of the general public are attending, so it is not necessarily evidence of a lack of journalistic objectivity. I'd also like to welcome our C-SPAN and our public radio audiences. Our luncheons are also featured on our member-produced weekly podcast from the National Press Club, available on iTunes. You can also follow the action on Twitter using hashtag NPC Lunch. After our guest speech concludes, we'll have a Q&A, and I will ask as many questions as time permits. Now it's time to introduce our head table guest, and I'd ask each of you here to stand up briefly as your name is announced. From your right, Ed Kelly, editor, The Washington Times. Jody Schneider, U.S. Congress and Tax Policy editor for Bloomberg. Bishop Harry Jackson, Bishop of the International Communion of Evangelical Churches. Lou Priebe, Chair of the National Press Club House Committee. Congressman Louis Gohmert, Republican from Texas and a guest of our speaker. Allison Fitzgerald, freelance journalist and chairwoman of the Speakers Committee. I'm going to skip our speaker for just a moment. Kate Michael, editor, K Street Kate magazine, and the Speakers Committee member who coordinated this luncheon. Jeannie Monahan, FRC's director for the Center for Human Dignity and guest of our speaker. Liz Spade, managing editor, Washington Post. David Ruhlman, vice president of operations at Salem Communications Corporation. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's luncheon speaker has experience in state government. He's a military veteran, a U.S. Marine, and he doesn't just talk about laws. He used to enforce them as a police officer who actually walked a street beat. But above all, he's an advocate. The organization which Tony Perkins has headed for 9 years, the Family Research Council, champions marriage and family as the foundation of civilization, the seedbed of virtue, and the wellspring of society. The FRC says it shapes public debate and formulates public policy that values the sanctity of human life and upholds the institutions of marriage and the family. Generally speaking, the organization cares about issues connected with cultural morality, limited government, and faithfulness to the U.S. Constitution promoted through its Judeo-Christian worldview. Interestingly, Perkins was once one of us. That is to say, he was once a reporter for the Baton Rouge television station WTBR. Now he hosts a regular national radio program, Washington Watch Weekly, heard on over 300 stations. He's been a guest on most major television news and public affairs programs and has co-authored a popular book, Personal Faith and Public Policy, as well as regularly writing op-eds for newspapers and magazine articles. FRC also was in the news recently because less than a month ago, a gunman armed with 50 rounds of ammunition entered the FRC's headquarters just 6 blocks from here. The shooter wounded security guard Leo Johnson, whose heroism that day helped to avert a potential tragedy. Perkins and his wife Lawana celebrated their silver wedding anniversary last year, and they are the proud parents of 5 children from the ages of 4 to 20 years old. As his organization's name suggests, Perkins is focused on the family. But Perkins argues that responsible parenthood can come only from a one-man, one-woman-led family unit. He also leads the FRC in lobbying for other socially conservative policies and believes that these are policy beliefs that will make or break the candidates in the upcoming 2012 presidential election. Here to speak more about this and the FRC's belief on how values will be a determining factor in the election outcome on November 6th, the president of the Family Research Council, Tony Perkins.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. And to the host committee, thank you so much for the invitation. Lou, Preby, thank you so much. And I want to especially thank my guests for being here with me, Bishop Harry Jackson, who is the co-author of our book, Personal Faith, Public Policy, a great friend, and of course my good friend from Texas, right next door. They wish they were part of Louisiana, but Louis Gomer, great friend. Thank you so much for being here, Louis. And Jeannie Monahan not only is on my team heading up our Work for Life, but she is the new president for the March for Life, and just so proud of the work that she does. So thank you. And thank for everyone else being here today. It's great to be with. I also want to extend an appreciation to the chef, Susan, for giving you a little taste of Louisiana today. I hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't enjoy it now, you'll enjoy it later. Well, I am grateful for the opportunity to be here at the press club and speak. As Teresa mentioned, I used to be on the other side of this and was for a short time in the press. And I appreciate the work that the media does, and obviously they have a shaping influence on our country and a part of this process. Before I begin, I want to first express my appreciation for those from literally around the world who have expressed concern for Leo Johnson and the entire FRC team in the wake of the shooting that took place at our building last month. You know, I'm grateful to report to you that Leo is doing well. He has a few more surgeries to go before he is back at his post at FRC, but fortunately because of his heroism, we are safe and secure at FRC, and we're expecting we're eager to have Leo back on the team. You know, about 5 years ago, my wife and I were celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary, and she called me at the office to inform me that we were going to have a baby. Now, I will tell you, at the time we had 3 girls and 1 boy, and I will tell you, the first words out of my mouth were probably not the most profound. I asked her, how did that happen? But I was excited. Wasn't quite what I was expecting after 21 years of marriage, but it was exciting. So about 3 months into this, we decided we need to tell the other children that we were going to have someone new in the house. So we pulled them all into the study, and we began to break the news to them. We said, soon someone else is going to be living in the house. They all wondered which grandparent was going to move in. I said, no, Mom is going to have a baby. Well, the girls were elated. They were so excited. They were going to have a little one that they could dress up, play with, carry around. My son David, who was 8 at the time, didn't say a word. He sat there very stoically till all of the celebration was over, and then he looked at me and said, Dad, if it's another girl, I'm out of here. Well, I'm happy to report with the birth of Samuel Adam Perkins that David has unpacked and he's decided to stay. Now, some of my non-Baptist friends have asked me, did you name him after the beer, Samuel Adams? No, but we do call him Bud for short. You know, there are some who would like to see us pack up and go away. Those of us who understand that we need a moral compass if this nation is to have a future. In fact, many may have been hoping that the threats and the harassment and now this attack would cause us to just leave. Well, let me be very clear. We are not going anywhere. In fact, I would say my team and I are more committed to our mission of advancing faith, family, and freedom than we ever have been before. Before I discuss the 2012 elections, the significance of this moment demands that I speak about what took place at our office just 4 weeks ago, which the FBI is continuing to investigate as an act of domestic terrorism. I would like to mention that the investigating agents have been extremely professional and very helpful in the wake of this incident in working with our team. I'm not sure, though, that the gravity of what happened, or what almost happened, on August the 15th was fully captured in the reporting immediately following the event. And more importantly, I think this is a moment for all of us to understand the responsibility we have as we advocate for causes to which we are all committed. When the shooter entered our building at approximately 10:45 a.m., he placed his backpack down in front of the security desk, which Leo, who was actually our building's operation manager, was temporarily manning. Leo sought to assist him, and at that point the assailant reached into his backpack and pulled out a 9mm pistol. In the ensuing few seconds, 3 rounds were fired. As the FBI has reconstructed it, the first bullet, which struck the elevator control panel in our lobby, was just a few inches above Leo's head as he ducked. Had he not remembered to duck, to amend President Reagan's famous phrase, he would, I am told, have been struck right in the head. The second shot shattered Leo's forearm, and the third shot struck the base of a nearby display case. Despite his serious wounds, Leo continued to rush forward and wrestled the assailant to the ground, took the gun from his possession, and then summoned help from other team members, one of whom called the D.C. police. I would also like to publicly thank the District of Columbia Police Chief, Kathy Lanier, for her department's response to the scene and her professionalism. Chief Lanier said it best. She said, "Leo Johnson is a hero as far as I'm concerned," and I think he is one as well. You know, what ifs always involve speculation, and the courts will determine culpability. But as far as capability, there can be no doubt. The man who shot Leo Johnson carried with him enough ammunition to kill over half the people in our office building that day. In addition to the 50 rounds of ammunition, the gunman carried with him 15 Chick-fil-A sandwiches which he had purchased the day before. The purpose of those sandwiches made the gunman's intent very clear, and it wasn't to feed the staff. As one of the investigating agents told me in the days following the shooting, Leo Johnson saved a lot of lives. I would also say, as I have told the agents investigating and said elsewhere in the media, we're thankful to the protecting hand of our Lord. We have no doubt that the Lord was watching over us that day. Let me add one final detail. After Leo took the pistol out of the man's hand, the assailant pleaded with Leo not to shoot him, saying something to the effect, "It's not personal, it's your organization that I don't like and what it stands for." Well, Leo is a part of our organization. And Leo told me later that he felt that in that moment, as he contemplated what to do, that the Lord told him not to shoot the man who had just sought to take his life. The mercy that Leo demonstrated in a moment when self-preservation in the heat of the battle could clearly be justified is the same type of mercy that our organization, of which he is a part, attempts to show each and every day as we advocate on behalf of families. I would think, or at least I would hope, that we could all agree that regardless of how intense our differences may be over issues such as the sanctity of life, the sacredness of marriage, the boundaries of sexual expression, and the exercise of religious freedom, violence against and by anyone is unacceptable. It's shocking to me how profound those differences have become in so short a period of time. Honestly, how many people in this audience would have thought just 2 decades back that we would be arguing over whether marriage still constitutes a covenant between a man and one woman? And there are organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center who have exploited these differences and in the process have fostered an environment of hostility by recklessly throwing labels like hate on organizations that express an opinion that is different from theirs. And unfortunately, some in the media who are sympathetic to their agenda have helped them along in this process. Today, we debate whether taking the life of a child in the womb just because she is a girl should be legally permissible. We debate whether religious institutions and businesses should be forced to provide $0 insurance coverage for medical procedures to which they have profound moral objections. We are considering steps that will shutter the doors of soup kitchens and adoption agencies if they will not submit to the state's demand regarding a novel definition of marriage and family. These issues, my friends, matter. They involve rights and duties that we at the Family Research Council and many others like us rank as fundamental to who we are as a society. As I stand here today, I pledge to redouble our efforts to persuade our fellow citizens on these issues and to move the electorate to embrace the core principles a majority of this nation have long espoused. But I also pledge to redouble our efforts to advocate these ideas with civility and compassion. We are accountable to a higher authority than public opinion. In Ephesians, the Apostle Paul writes that we are to speak the truth in love. Our aim is to speak the truth in love, and if we fail to do so, we will acknowledge it and we will set the record straight. And that includes what we say regarding homosexuality. And I would hope that the other side would make a similar commitment. We have asked and we renew the request today that the Southern Poverty Law Center and HRC cease their bitter and unsupported characterizations of FRC as a hate group, akin to the Ku Klux Klan and the Aryan Nation and similar groups that espouse evil and violence, which FRC denounces. This language is meant to inflame, not inspire, to intimidate, and not to illuminate. It is to poison and not to persuade. This type of incendiary rhetoric seeks to marginalize and silence people of Orthodox Christian faith, and it fosters an environment of violence. And it's wrong, and it needs to stop. This would seem an appropriate place to mention Dana Milbank of the Washington Post. Dana has covered FRC events many times, and no one in this town would accuse him of handling us, or anyone else for that matter, with kid gloves. With his pen liberally dipped in H.L. Mencken's inkwell, Dana agrees with our policy stances on very little. But on August the 16th, he wrote a column for the Post in which he urged recognition of the fact that there are unbalanced and potentially violent people of all political persuasions. The rest of us, he wrote, need to be careful about hurling accusations that can stir up the crazies. Unwittingly, these critics only underscore Mr. Milbank's point. For so common sense an assertion that Dana Milbank made, those he meant to call to civility and not defending particular groups, he was labeled despicable and an enabler by the very people he called to account. Hate can do terrible things when it is leveled at an opponent, but it does worse things to those who nurture it in their hearts. Let me say this as plainly as I can. We will continue to speak the truth. We will speak it in love, but we will speak the truth nonetheless. We will not abandon the principles we espouse. On marriage, we will hold the position of the major world religions and the constitutional majorities of 4/5 of the states, and that of Barack Obama until May 9th of this year. On the sanctity of human life, we will hold to the views of Ronald Reagan and Mother Teresa. On religious liberty, we will cling, yes, cling to the principles of the founders and of the First Amendment. On the need for morality in government and the populace, our ideas run close to those of figures from John Jay to George Washington to Abraham Lincoln to Teddy Roosevelt. These ideas, yes, they can be debated, and they should be, but they are not battle plans of armies of hate. The ends don't justify all means, and calls at any cost is the undoing of a free and civil society. It is time for the vindictiveness to end, and I say with confidence, the SPLC and HRC, it is time to dial down your demonization of those who differ with you. It's time to stop hurling labels of hate and have a legitimate debate about the policies that govern our nation. And those are the issues that I want to spend the balance of my time talking about this morning. How are these values issues that value voters care about? How will they fare in the 2012 election? Well, as the Duke of Wellington put it after Waterloo, I believe this will be a near-run thing. Our nation is both closely and sharply divided. And we at the Family Research Council are and intend to remain in the thick of it. This past Sunday night, we held a nationwide simulcast called I Pledge Sunday. Senator Rick Santorum, Bishop Harry Jackson, actor Kirk Cameron, and other pro-family and Christian leaders joined a network of over 1,000 churches and home groups for this event. It will probably be the largest gathering of Christians prior to the 2012 election. We covered policy issues and urged the attendees to pray for the election, to prepare by registering themselves and friends to vote, and then to pledge to vote on Election Day, November the 6th. And we're asking them to sign a pledge at ipledgetovote.org that they will do these three things: pray, prepare, and participate in one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Our 7th annual Values Voter Summit begins this Friday. When we began this 7 years ago, it was more or less just us. Even so, that first event drew nearly 2,000 people, well beyond our expectations. As Barry Lynn of the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, who is a regular attendee, and we welcome him, he told me at the first VVS that this was not a gathering of GOP consultants looking for their next contract. He said instead it is people new to the political process who want to participate in their country's affairs. And with that, I agree with Barry. This year, the VVS has a total of 10 sponsors and co-sponsors. It has expanded rapidly. Those sponsors include Gary Bauer's American Values, the Heritage Foundation, American Family Association, and the Media Research Center. This year, we are honoring Morton Blackwell, founder of the Leadership Institute, a man who epitomizes quiet, effective leadership that prepares people for long and thoughtful careers in public life. We hold this event every year to remind voters and leaders alike that value issues are vital. We believe that economic, national security, and social issues are mutually reinforcing, not mutually exclusive. We believe that strong communities need both wise government and a vibrant civil sector. We also believe that if you want to strengthen the economy, you must first strengthen the American family. And I'm confident that values issues will play a deciding role in the presidential election and many congressional races this year. Take the 9 swing states that most observers believe are crucial to the Obama-Romney contest. You have Nevada, Ohio, Florida, Colorado, Iowa, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Virginia, New Hampshire. 7 of these 9 states have voted on defining marriage in their state's constitution. 2 have refused to allow the citizens to vote. The average margin of victory in those 7 states was 21 percentage points for traditional marriage. Throw in 3 more states that some think are going to be critical this year: Michigan, Missouri, and Indiana. The average margin for marriage rises to 23 percentage points. Appeals to the marriage issue in those states should favor Romney and Ryan. As for voters not caring about social issues in this election cycle, a Zogby poll released last week shows that the issue which the largest percentage of likely voters agree upon is this: the family is the basis of a strong community and culture. The ideal family is built around a stable marriage between a man and a woman. More than any other issue, this is what likely voters agree upon. But you'll probably not hear that reported on by the media, or by most, because it's outside the narrative that many would like us to believe. The 4 states that have voted on marriage, or 4 states will vote on marriage this fall on their ballots: Minnesota, Washington State, Maine, and Maryland. Now, these are not swing states nationally. There we expect, as I said, some near-run things. Americans are also trending pro-life. The Guttmacher Institute, formerly an arm of Planned Parenthood, has noted that 2011 and 2012 were banner years for pro-life legislation, with 30 states passing 131 pro-life laws. States are passing bills to limit abortion when a developing child is capable of feeling pain from the procedure, when the reason for the abortion is to prevent the birth of a girl child, and when the facilities performing the procedures are substandard. States are voting to redirect family planning funds away from agencies that promote abortion. There is little doubt that states would do even more to protect the unborn and their mothers if federal court precedent permitted it. Nearly 4 decades after Roe v. Wade, the American heart is not in line with the Supreme Court's sweeping decrees. But what do we hear from the press? We have this creation of a mythological war on women, energized by establishment politicians who are too eager to throw the most faithful pro-life members under the bus if they become too strident in defending the unborn. Many of the states where pro-life action has been strongest are swing states in the 2012 elections. These issues can, again, make the difference for pro-marriage, pro-life, and pro-religious liberty candidates as they did in 2004. Finally, on religious liberty, the most important theme is unity. The Obama administration's preventative services mandate has drawn people together across denominational lines. The issue is not no-cost contraception or free sterilization. The issue is whether people of moral and religious conviction can be forced into providing services they frankly regard as disservices. If they can, then compulsory church funding of abortion is permissible. This is a line previous leaders have declined to cross because it is divisive and unnecessary. It's ironic that the pro-choice side, who fight under the banner of limiting government intrusion into their lives, advocates for ending the choice of the religious community and defends government intrusion into their health care. Recently, FRC partnered with our friends at the Liberty Institute in Texas on a report called The Religious Hostility in America. The report details more than 600 incidents over the past decade in which official action has been taken to challenge or limit religious freedom of citizens. They involve cases like school valedictorian Angela Hildebrand, who was told that she could not use the words Lord and Amen in her graduation speech because an agnostic student in the audience would be offended. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals finally vindicated her rights, but other cases have not turned out so well. In this age when virtually no opinion or speech, no matter how poorly or even obscenely expressed, can be limited by law, these attacks on religious liberty stand out as an ironic exception. The free exercise of religion is among those rights expressly singled out in the First Amendment for protection. In 2012, all of these issues will be salient at the polls. The economy and jobs are no doubt the foremost in the minds of voters. But you know something, people don't live in factories and in office buildings. We live in homes and neighborhoods, congregations and communities. The fabric of our lives is determined not by what we manufacture and the goods we can buy, but the goodness we manufacture for others. We yearn to live in places of peace, civility, learning, character, charity, and moral responsibility. All of these questions are on the ballot in 2012, and that is why value voters, I believe, will go to the polls in record numbers. No matter what you call an election about, values will be on the minds of voters. And we look forward to a fair fight and to victories for faith, family, and freedom this year. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Over the past couple days, we have seen how attempts to whip up religious fervor in Egypt and Libya have resulted in the death of an American ambassador and 3 other Americans. When you see that happen, what is your reaction? Do these groups have a special responsibility not to inflame their followers to the point that they become out of control or violent?
Obviously, that is on the mind of many Americans as we woke up to the news of what happened in Libya and in Egypt last night. And you know, we have freedom of religion in this country. We have the freedom of speech, and I'm speaking of our country in particular. But it is ordered liberty that we have, and that our freedom extends to the point that it does not infringe upon another. And when you incite violence and when you take action, as we are seeing unfolding in Libya, that should be of great concern. And it should be of concern to us because these are some of the same folks that were empowered by our actions recently in Libya, which were not approved by Congress. And we are now seeing, we're putting in place in certain parts of the world those who are hostile toward democracy and freedom. And we need to be very careful of who we support in our foreign policy. And I, quite frankly, and I have not, this is still unfolding, but I think it's another example of our current failure in foreign policy in America.
What is your reaction to Governor Romney's statement that it is disgraceful that the Obama administration's first response is to sympathize with those who wanted the attacks? Do you think those are helpful comments given the situation, and do you think the Obama administration sympathizes with those who wanted to do the attacks?
Let me take the latter part first. I don't think the president sympathizes with those who perpetrated these attacks against Americans. I would say that we saw the earlier statement which was retracted from Egypt, expressing apologies for what may have incited the actions in Egypt. I do think that there is a propensity of this administration to apologize, as opposed to considering this as an act of war. I mean, what you're seeing here is you're seeing an attack on Americans. And I don't think we need to apologize for being Americans. I don't think we have to apologize for something that may have happened within the borders of our country that we disagree with. I mean, we don't agree with inciting violence, but it happened. If the reports are correct that this movie was behind it, we don't have to apologize for everything that happens in this country. It does not justify the taking of American lives. And I think it's time that we send a message across the world that I don't care where we place Americans, whether it's our members of the military or our diplomatic corps, we will stand in their defense and we will protect them, and they will not stand alone in the face of these types of unwarranted threats.
Given the Bible's relatively few mentions of abortion and homosexuality, around 10 combined, and the numerous mentions of poverty and hunger, at least 200, how do you justify your strong stance against homosexuality and abortion while ignoring hunger and poverty?
Well, there's an assumption there that we ignore poverty and hunger, and that is a false assumption. If you actually look through Scripture and you study the Greek in terms of poverty, there are 3 types of words used to describe wealth and poverty. And there are those in society who are impoverished because of choices that they make. Now, there are those who are impoverished because of circumstances which should be the object of our charity, which we frequently partner with organizations to do that. I'm a member of a local church. And we give through our missions, through the cooperative program as Baptist, to a lot of both national and international ministries to help those who are poor. That's not our main focus. That's not our mission. Our mission is to work to shape public policy to help foster an environment where people will make the better choices so that we don't increase unnecessary poverty and the breakup of family. When you look at what's happening in America and the lack of family formation, when we have 40% of America's children being born out of wedlock, and you look at that one indication when a child is born, whether or not the mother is married to a father as the primary predictor of whether or not that child will be in poverty. Why would we not want to go back and stem the poverty before it begins, stop it before it starts? And you can do that by encouraging family formation and trying to encourage people not to engage in irresponsible behavior. Let me just say this, the latest statistics out on the reduction in unwed pregnancy and the decline in those numbers, especially among teens, would indicate that it goes back to policies adopted about a decade ago, which was under the George W. Bush administration and the abstinence programs, where there's a delay in seeing the effect from the policies put in place. We've actually seen that abstinence works. And when we see those that we can encourage our young people to not engage in behavior that is harmful both to them and to society as a whole. So there is a relationship between our policies and to the economic well-being of both society and as individuals within that society.
Given your comments on the events in Libya and Egypt, what are you suggesting the president do? Are you seeking a military response?
Well, I'm not a part of the president's cabinet on foreign policy. If he wants to talk to me about what to do in terms of marriage, I will be happy to sit down and talk with him. I mean, I think it's too early to determine what actions should be taken in response, but I do think a very strong message needs to be sent, and if we can find those who are responsible, and certainly if there was any direct link to those that we have supported in destabilizing Libya were responsible for this, I think action should be taken. One thing needs to be very clear. When we send someone over to represent us in a foreign country, they are there as representatives of all of us. And we should defend them and ensure that they are protected, and when their lives are taken, that is an act against all Americans. I don't care what administration it is, Republican or Democrat, it is an act of aggression against every American.
Will Representative Todd Akin be given a speaking slot at the Values Voter Conference later this week, and will he attend?
Well, unfortunately, we have a waiting list of those who want to speak. We've had to turn away members of Congress, but he will be there participating in one of our events and will be speaking at, I believe, our Political Action Committee reception Friday afternoon. You didn't ask this question, but I'll answer it anyway. Todd Akin is a friend of mine. I have known him since he arrived in Congress 12 years ago. I supported him in his primary when he was running for the Senate. Because of his record of being unquestionably strong on the issues of faith, family, and freedom. He is an American patriot. And you look at his family, all of his sons have served their nation in the military, in either the Navy or the Marine Corps. And he and his family are examples of what is good about America. And I supported him for the work that he has done. Now, I have talked with him, and I did not agree with the characterization of his comments or how he communicated the issue a month or so ago. But that does not cause me to back away from my support from Todd Akin nor our organization. We're not here to support Republicans or Democrats. We're here to support those who will stand up for life, for marriage, and for family. And I'm disappointed in some in the political establishment who are quick to cut and run when somebody gets in trouble. Who makes their living speaking has never said something that afterwards they thought, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I'm the only one. But you know what? A person of integrity acknowledges it, apologizes for it, and moves on. And that's exactly what Todd Akin is doing, and I'm not going to abandon my friend and someone who has been a friend to the family.
Should the shooter from the incident at the HRC be charged with a hate crime? FRC.
Well, that's up to the law enforcement officials. Actually, they're not looking at this as a hate crime, but rather an act of domestic terrorism. So I will leave that up to the authorities to determine, and I'm sure that they will pursue it, I think, with all diligence. As I said, thus far, the investigators at the field level have been extremely professional, very helpful, and thorough in their investigation. We'll see what the prosecutors do with it now. Let me just say this. I have a great team of individuals at FRC, a great team that within an hour or so after the shooting, we came together. We prayed, obviously, for Leo. We prayed for one another. And then before we departed, it was suggested by one of our team members we needed to pray for the assailant. And we prayed for him, and I can tell you that while we support justice in our system, there is no animosity toward this man from our organization. We pray for him. We pray for his spiritual well-being. But I will echo once again, we will not allow these types of threats or acts of violence in any way to deter us from standing for the things that we represent here in Washington, D.C.
This question is from a member of faith that is not Christian, and they want to know how do you justify imposing your religious beliefs on them?
Well, I'm not imposing my beliefs on anyone, but in our society, in our system of government, what we do is we all come together at the table and we work through and we arrive at consensus. So you come to that table with some worldview. You come with some value construct. And mine, our organization, and historically this country has come to it with a Judeo-Christian worldview or a values construct. And so we make no apologies for being a part of the process and shaping policies that would be influenced by that worldview. I mean, someone's values is going to dominate in this process. I mean, let's be real. Somebody's values will be reflected in the policies that we adopt. Are we to check our faith at the door simply because we are from the historic Orthodox Christian viewpoint? Or is that not valid? I welcome everybody in this country with a religious perspective or not to participate in the process. Make the arguments, work through, and try to be a part of arriving at consensus. I do believe historically this country has done that, and we have been better for it. We've survived 236 years, not because we silenced any particular part, whether majority or minority, but we worked together, we wrestled through the process, and we arrived at consensus. That's what makes America great, and that's what's alarming about what is happening in America today, where the majority in many cases is being stigmatized with labels because of that Orthodox Christian viewpoint. And it's a clear attempt to silence. And what that will do is only short-circuit our process and will lead to acts of violence, like what we saw at the Family Research Council.
Your Bible may state gay marriage is unacceptable, but your Constitution states there is separation between religion and government. Why do you insist on attempting to insert your religious beliefs into law instead of keeping them in the more appropriate place, your church?
Well, I don't have my Constitution with me, but let me correct that statement. The Constitution actually guarantees that I have a freedom of religion. Now, we've seen a term that has been bandied about by this administration that they support the freedom of worship. There's a huge difference between the freedom of worship and the freedom of religion. The freedom of worship is what this questioner suggests, that I can do it within the four walls of my church. That's not what the founders guaranteed me. The founders guaranteed us the ability to live out our faith each and every day and in the policies that we adopt. Again, it goes back to arriving at consensus through the process in a legitimate fashion. There is, what ultimately is happening is like what we saw last week at the Democratic Convention. This idea of a separation of church and state is nothing more than a veiled attempt at the separation of God from government. And that is a dangerous place to go. because then you move to a totalitarian form of government. And when you have a government that is accountable to no one but themselves, no one is safe.
Are you satisfied with what you're hearing from Mitt Romney on marriage and gay rights, or do you want to hear more?
I think Mitt Romney is doing a good job in becoming more comfortable in talking about the issues of faith, talking about the social issues of marriage and life in particular. Look, I've said this before, he and I have talked about this. There is no question that we have theological differences when it comes to our religion. But we have a shared concern over where this country stands today, and we have a shared value system that we believe can help get America back on the right track. And I believe that Governor Romney is doing a good job in reaching out and bringing in all concerns within the conservative movement, including those of social conservatives and the values voters. So I am, and I think the selection of Paul Ryan was a bold selection. I think it shows that he's serious about getting the economic house of America in order, and I commended him on that pick. And so I mean, clearly we'll continue to encourage and suggest that they are stronger in some areas, but I will have to say, even this last weekend, that the governor was talking about the foundational aspect of recognizing God in our country. And I think that's important. I think it's important to be a part of our discussion, because there is a clear line of distinction, I think, between what these two candidates and their parties are offering America.
Can you make any predictions about the relative enthusiasm for the Romney-Ryan ticket amongst the value voters and the extent of their support?
I think it's building. I mean, as anything, you got to get forward momentum, and I think that momentum is moving forward. We're not there yet, but I think what you see happening is the Obama administration is helping the enthusiasm level day by day. And I think what occurred last week in Charlotte, you know, where you had the absence of God, even an oblique reference to God, as in God-given abilities, left out of their platform, and then they had to go back and put it back in. You know, that was it was a pretty strong message sent to America. In fact, if you watched it, I wasn't there, but I wasn't invited, but I watched it on TV. When you saw them move to reinsert the language into the platform referencing God and Jerusalem, I've been a part of legislative bodies for years, and I wouldn't say I have a trained ear, but I can tell when I hear 2/3 in support of something and not. And I did talk with a friend of mine who was a delegate, and he said it was clear that not only did they not have the 2/3 vote, but there were more nays than there were yays. And the fact that they had to do it 3 times, you know, I can recall sometime in history when someone else denied God 3 times.
How do evangelical Christians really feel about having a Mormon as the Republican candidate for president?
Well, I think I addressed that. I mean, we are not, we're not glossing over the fact that there are significant theological differences, but we're not hiring a pastor-in-chief. We're not asking him to lead a national church. We don't want a national church. We want religious freedom. And I think someone who has been a part of a persecuted religion is going to be even more sensitive to the issue of religious freedom. I'm going to be very honest. I've said this probably. I was supporting someone else in the primary. That's what's great about our system. You get 2 bites at the apple. You know, my candidate didn't win in the primary, but this candidate lines up as close to my values as anybody in the race. And that's what, you know, we're encouraging people across America. If they go to I Pledge to Vote, register to vote, and vote your values. And that's not just the top of the ticket, that's all the way down. Vote your values, your biblical values. That's our message to churches. And if there's not a clear choice, just vote for the one who most clearly lines up. And I will go back again and say, when it comes to the values of the family, values of faith and values of freedom, Mitt Romney is the clear choice, I think, for value voters across this country.
Liberals and Democrats maintain that conservatives and Republicans have a war on women. How do you respond, and what really is traditional Christian view on how women should be treated?
Well, my wife would tell you that a woman is to be treated with great respect and honor. In fact, the traditional view in Christianity, as it's practically lived out as we've been instructed, is that we're, as men, to literally give everything that we care about and lay it down for our wives. I cannot think of a higher position in society than to be the focal point of someone surrendering everything that they care about. And that's what husbands have been called to do for their wives, as Christ did for the church. And it's not that we have too much of Christianity in our relationships, it's that we don't have enough. And so I think there is an exalted view of women within conservative circles, especially in the church. We don't see them as objects. We certainly don't see them as profit centers for our abortion industries. We see them as women who are in need of compassion and care. And that's why you have over 2,300 care pregnancy centers dotting the landscape of America that have thousands upon thousands of volunteers reaching out to those women in need and to their unborn children. I think there's a vast difference between the way Republicans or conservatives see women than liberals. And it's not the conservatives or Christians that have a war on women.
If one of your children told you that he or she were homosexual, would you disown him or her?
I tell you what, I would not disown my children for anything. But let me say this, and I've been asked this question before on television shows as one of those gotcha questions. I believe that as a parent, I have a responsibility for the environment in which I raise my children. And I believe as a parent, we have the ability to protect them from a lot of unfortunate experiences that have shaping influences upon their lives. Now, that's not to say that those whose children may have ended up in homosexuality were not good parents. We can't guarantee that. I mean, we can do our very best job as a parent, and still something may happen, whether they end up in drugs or whether they end up in some other lifestyle that they end up in. That doesn't diminish our love for them at all. They are our children. We'll always love them, but we don't necessarily condone what they do. And if we really love them, we'll be willing to tell them the truth, that the choices that they have made to continue in what they're doing are both destructive to them personally and as society as a whole. So while I would disagree with my child being involved in that lifestyle, I would not in any way, nor would I ever encourage a parent to disown a child because of something like that occurred to them. Love them compassionately, pray for them, but don't condone and enable that behavior, whatever it might be.
Who is the typical values voter?
Well, they don't have a big button or funny hats. The typical values voter is really much broader than we think. It's those folks who understand that the family is important. They vote, yes, they vote about the economy. And I will admit, I've said before, the economy is at the forefront of what people are considering in this election. When you don't have a job, that's a value you're concerned about. And so those issues are at the forefront. But values voters are a little more complex than they're given credit for. They can process, it's like a Windows operating system. They can determine whether someone's pro-life, whether they're pro-marriage and pro-family, while at the same time evaluating their economic policies. And so the values voter goes beyond just the evangelical voter or the social conservative voter. It's those that are concerned about the environment in which their children are growing up in. I was amazed a few years ago, we did a poll on the issues that were a concern to people. The number one issue that ranked about 80% was the issue of language, obscene language used on television. Parents were concerned about that. Why? Well, I remember when I first had children, you know, there were things that, you know, being in the Marine Corps, there's a lot of things I heard that just my ears became a little, you know, a little hardened to some of those words. But as soon as you started having children, you began to increase a little sensitivity to what was going on around you. That's the value voter. The value voter is concerned about creating the best environment for their children, that they might have the best hope of a prosperous and safe future.
How do you assess the Obama-Biden four-year record and their platform for the next 4 years?
Well, I hope I don't have to answer the second question. I hope America sees that the first 4 was a bad mistake and that we don't need a second 4. Look, when you go through the list, it's very clear, this administration, we have gone from about $7 trillion in debt to $16 trillion in debt, or $8 trillion to $16 trillion. We have seen the dismantling of our nation's military, both from a moral standpoint with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We've seen religious freedom stripped away from our members of the military, and now we're wanting to take away the money. I mean, we have the most dedicated, best, trained, experienced military in the history of the world, and we are systematically prepared to dismantle it with these cuts that are going to be going through. This is a travesty. I came into the Marine Corps under the Reagan years when he was rebuilding the military. We need a commander-in-chief who will rebuild our nation's military and pursue a similar policy of peace through strength.
We are almost out of time, but before asking the last question, I have a couple of housekeeping issues to take care of. First of all, I would like to remind you all of our upcoming luncheon speakers. Tomorrow we have James P. Hoffa, President of the International Brotherhood and Teamsters, will discuss defining patriotism, protecting America and the American worker. On October 2nd, Secretary Arne Duncan, U.S. Department of Education. And on October 10th, General Martin Dempsey, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Second, I'd like to present our guest with our traditional NPC coffee mug.
Oh, thank you.
And seeing as how our speaker is also from Louisiana, I wanted to present you with Red Beans and Ricely Yours. This was the last time that Louis Armstrong played the trumpet in public, and it was at a National Press Club presidential inauguration. And it was recently on iTunes best-selling list.
Thank you very much.
And my last question for you. As a marriage advocate and a 25-year veteran of marriage, what advice do you give newlyweds who want to be successful for the next 25 years?
Always say yes, honey. I will tell you, our first couple years of marriage when I was in the Marine Corps were rather rough. But it was when we actually went to a marriage conference, and I mentioned it earlier. When you really realize the role that you have as a husband, according to Scripture, that we're to lay down everything that we care about and aspire to for our wives, it makes a huge difference in a marriage relationship. And I would not trade my almost 26 now, 26 years with my wife and the 5 children that we have. It's been wonderful, and I hope and pray the Lord gives us another 26 years plus. It's been a great journey, and I'm very grateful for my wife.
Thank you all for coming today. I'd also like to thank the National Press Club staff, including its Journalism Institute and Broadcast Center, for organizing today's event. Finally, here's a reminder that you can find more information about the National Press Club on our website. Also, if you'd like to get a copy of today's program, please check out our website, press.org. Thank you, and we're adjourned.